Hi, good morning, everyone. We are Team 4. I'm Shalane, and my other teammates are Shering and Riza, who is not here in Victoria right now. And we are going to present to you observational method. Before we start our presentation, we would like to acknowledge the land in where we live, we work, and we learn from this institution, from our classmates, and a lot of our good lecturers. We are just happy that we also share this opportunity with everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about the definition of observation method on this slide. Observation method is a research technique that applies observing to collect data on a particular subject. The researcher observes the participants' behavior and record them. Observation method includes two different types as controlled and naturalistic, which will be explained in the next slides. Data collection and sampling methods. Data collection has two different parts, structured and unstructured. A structured observation method is a systematic observation method where data is collected as a predefined schedule. The specific variable is used in this method for data collection. The unstructured observation method is conducted in a free and open manner without using any predetermined objectives, schedule, or variables. Sampling methods for observation method has three different parts: event, time, target time, or instantaneous sampling. The researcher decides beforehand which events or behavior to record and which to ignore when applying the event sampling method. Time sampling. In this method, the researcher chooses the time when he will observe. He makes a record of the occurrence only in the specific and predetermined period. Target time or instantaneous sampling. In this method, the researcher decides beforehand at what moment the observation will take place, and the observations are recorded at the moment. There is no significance to anything that happens before or after the moment. We have three different types of observation methods: controlled, naturalistic, and participant. Controlled observation. The researcher can decide the location and time of the procedure and then classify the results into categories that are coded. Participants are randomly allocated to each independent variable group. Naturalistic observation. Naturalistic observation is a method of research that is commonly used by psychologists or other social scientists. In this process, the participants are observed and studied in an open or natural environment. In the field, the role of a researcher is to find, observe, and document whatever he sees in a natural habitat. Participant observation method is a variation of naturalistic observation, but here the researcher participates and becomes a member of the group under study in order to acquire a better understanding of their lives. Controlled observation has its own strengths and weaknesses. In this method, place and time is decided by the researchers, and the variables are controlled and determined, and the data will be sent into coded categories. That is why the study can be repeated by other researchers. It is easy to generalize to a larger sample and easy to analyze, because the results are all in numbers. A controlled observation method lacks validity, since participants' behavior change when they know they are being observed. Strengths and weaknesses of naturalistic observation. In this method, the behavior of the participants is spontaneous in a natural setting. This method's advantage is that it generates ideas, and it's ecologically more valid. But on the other hand, as the variables are not controlled, the study cannot be repeated by other researchers. It's also more time consuming, and so it can be done on small scale samples. And here we have an example of observation method. Gallia and Donner used observation method on visitors to the city of Girona in Spain to obtain a behavioral pattern. They also used a questionnaire after the observation to collect information on individual differences in tourists that lead to specific behaviors. Eventually, they were able to determine distinct categories for different sites in the city, ranging from the start places to the peripheral ones. They could also identify an itinerary for tourists who visit the city.
In this slide, I'll talk about observation research relates to mixed method design. The information gathered in observational research project is frequently qualitative, but it can also be quantitative for both. An observation method is related to mixed method when evaluating tourist satisfactions and dissatisfaction during cultural festival. Visitors' overall satisfaction can be examined in terms of its relationship to visitors' satisfactions from local events to visitors' perceived importance of interpretive programs to learning and visitation pattern. To avoid an inaccuracy caused by bias during evaluations and interpretation in mixed method, observation method watches a participant and record their reactions and actions for later assessment. In this slide, I'll talk about potential applications of observation method to tourism management research. The critical turn post-pandemic in tourism is shortfall of revenue because of unprecedented travel restriction. Profound impact of travel restriction had an adverse effect on people, livelihood, and increased obstacles across many dimensions. An observation method can be applied to study the impact of COVID-19 on tourism and hospitality related industry. The study location can include sectors which closely work with tourism, for example, like restaurants, hotels, guide training center, and travel agencies. The business owner, guides, cook, tour, and travel operator shall be the focus group for the research. A combined direct observations of focus group with conventional questionnaires can help to obtain data on the impact of pandemic on tourism related sectors. Our data relating to financial shortage followed by data relating to issues encountered in both work and personal life can be gathered with the help of observations and questionnaires.
Thank you, Reza and Shireen. And now, let's learn the tips on how to use this method effectively in practice. First on the list, determine your research objective. Understand the purpose and objective of your research, then determine what question you're attempting to answer and who you're observing. However, working with a reasonable time frame will need you to concentrate on specific question. Also, this does not rule out the possibility of noticing other relevant details. You'll start with a particular goal in mind, but be open to changing your mind. And the next, establish recording method. It is essential to limit or eliminate any disruptive or unfamiliar gadget from the surrounding you see to make observation more successful. For example, recording observation in settings where the people being observed are aware. They may be, videotape is generally ineffective. Remember that filming without their knowledge is unethical. The most frequent approach would be taking notes. You can also use image, audio recording, and other means in public location. And then third, try to be objective. Keep an open mind and don't bring up past assumption. Even though you will start with a specific goal, try to retain an open mind and avoid having predetermined assumptions. However, some bias is inherent when researchers attempt to analyze sensory data. Confirmation bias, for example, occurs when observers' observations are skewed toward confirming what they anticipate to see. And then lastly, The tip is to analyze behavior in your data. Make sure make sense of the data by diving into it to uncover theme and patterns, codes, and systematically organize your data. Typically, you'll need to interview people in the place you're monitoring, whether it is during the observation or after, to make sense of the data you are collecting. And finally, we would like to share to you what we have learned from this presentation. First, get permission. Establish that you have the necessary permission to conduct your research and ensure that you have done your assignment and received all the required permission. And then secondly, be prepared and have backup plans. During the observational research, a lot can happen. Make sure you have alternative measures in place. For example, additional batteries for your camera, extra paper for taking notes, and other items are recommended. And also, make a plan for where and when you'll go to the bathroom and when you'll eat your meal. Good planning ahead of time will definitely pay off. Also, there are issues with generalizability and reliability because the researchers can collect a large amount of data regarding a particular activity. Observational research, for example, findings are deemed to have high validity. However, there are some drawbacks. Finding from an observational study may only apply to a specific population, hence, it cannot be applied to others. Next, there's also the issue of researchers' bias. The researchers is frequently thought to be able to see what they want to see. On the other hand, bias may often be addressed by training or electronic recording for observation. And lastly, think about the benefits and the drawbacks of using observation as research method before committing. This is also implies that users must be aware of the problem that this method bring and take suitable technique to lessen if necessary. And I would suggest to combine differing approaches such as using questionnaires, interview, and observation is a good idea. Thank you, and the next slides would be our references. Have a nice day.